Hello everyone, this is the History Spectrum channel. In this video, we will discuss the Sanhedrin, an ancient Jewish judicial institution that was probably created during the Persian period in the 5th-6th century BC. Please watch until the end as you will find some surprising stories about the myths and people's lives at that time. Establishment and historical background of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was necessary for the maintenance of fair trial and order. In ancient Jewish society, the society of the time was a mixture of diverse opinions and complex religious laws, and a consistent court was needed. For example, even the detailed rules of daily life, such as dietary regulations and holidays, needed to be fairly adjudicated. The Sanhedrin was essential for ancient Jews to establish fair judgment and social order. The role of the Sanhedrin evolved over time and changed according to the needs of society. As political, social, and economic conditions changed, the Sanhedrin had to deal with more complex issues. Under Roman rule, the Sanhedrin served to protect Jewish law while balancing it with Roman law. As time went on, the Sanhedrin adapted to the changing needs of the Jewish community and continued to play a variety of roles. From its inception, the Sanhedrin had a profound impact on the Jewish community. Its decisions set religious and ethical standards and had a direct impact on people's lives. For example, decisions on every aspect of daily life, such as the rules of Sabbath and food regulations, shaped Jewish culture. The Sanhedrin played an important role in laying the foundation for Jewish culture and law, and influencing society for a long time. Memorable trials, moments that changed history. Many trials have changed the course of history and impacted the world today. This is because these trials brought about significant changes in the social, political, and religious spheres. For example, the trial of Akiva ben Yosef is said to have had a profound impact on the future of Judaism. These trials are sometimes so important that they change the way people think and the structure of society. The Sanhedrin's decisions embody the tension between law and ethics. They were important because they served to reconcile the sacred law, halakha, with people's daily lives. As an example, the Sanhedrin's deliberations of differing opinions reflected a diversity of views. Sanhedrin decisions had profound ethical and social implications beyond simply enforcing the law. Prominent decisions by the Sanhedrin had deep stories and influences behind them. This is because these decisions reflect key moments that shaped Jewish identity and culture. For example, the decision of Johannes ben Zakkai is said to have determined the direction of Judaism after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. These decisions continue to have a profound impact on Jewish life and thought throughout the ages. Structure and members of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a supreme court with a unique internal structure. This structure was necessary to ensure a fair and inclusive trial. It consisted of 71 members, who came from a wide variety of backgrounds and brought together multiple perspectives. The internal structure of the Sanhedrin enhanced its fairness and efficiency and allowed for the inclusion of diverse opinions. The selection and qualification of members was critical to ensuring the quality and fairness of the Sanhedrin. The selection of wise and experienced individuals helped to maintain credibility and respect for the court's decisions. Members were required to have a thorough education and a deep understanding of religious law, often requiring years of study and experience. The selection process and rigorous eligibility criteria were central to the Sanhedrin's ability to maintain a high degree of professionalism and impartiality. Role assignments and decision-making processes within the Sanhedrin were detailed to ensure efficient and fair trials. This is because each member had a specific role, and the decision-making process was based on strict rules, which allowed for balanced decisions. For example, there were a variety of protocols, such as discussion was broad-based and final decisions were made by a majority vote. This division of roles and processes enabled the Sanhedrin to make fair and efficient decisions. The Sanhedrin and the Roman Empire. Under Roman rule, there was a marked change in the function and authority of the Sanhedrin. This was because Roman political influence and governing strategies directly affected the operation of the Sanhedrin. Rome sometimes limited the jurisdiction of the Sanhedrin and intervened in certain cases. Under Roman rule, the Sanhedrin was subject to certain restrictions on its authority and independence. The Sanhedrin were often placed in sensitive positions in political strife. This was because they were the religious leaders of the Jewish people, but they also had to come to terms with Roman power. For example, in situations under Roman rule, the Sanhedrin sometimes represented the Jews in negotiations with Rome. The Sanhedrin acted cautiously under the dual pressures of political strife and the preservation of their national identity. The Sanhedrin's influence shifted over time and continued to adapt to various external factors. In response to political and social changes, the Sanhedrin had to change its structure and policies. In particular, after the Jewish War, the Sanhedrin moved from Jerusalem to Yamnia. The Sanhedrin adapted to the various challenges of its long history and continued to maintain its role as the religious and social center of the Jewish people. The abolition of the Sanhedrin and its legacy. The abolition of the Sanhedrin was an important turning point in Jewish history. External political pressures and internal social changes made its function unsustainable. In particular, after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE, the authority and function of the Sanhedrin was greatly diminished. The abolition of the Sanhedrin brought about serious changes in the structure of Jewish society and religion. The teachings of the Sanhedrin continue to have a profound impact today. This is because its decisions and legal views are deeply rooted in later Jewish jurisprudence and thought. The Talmud, for example, records the interpretation and application of Jewish law, and forms the legal and ethical foundation of Judaism. The teachings of the Sanhedrin remain an integral part of the development of Jewish culture and religion to this day. The legacy of the Sanhedrin has left a deep mark on both culture and religion. The Sanhedrin made many important cultural and religious decisions that shaped Jewish identity over time. The Sanhedrin was the highest court of Jewish law, charged with interpreting and applying Jewish teachings, both oral and written, to ensure justice. The Sanhedrin deeply influenced the daily lives and beliefs of the Jewish people, and its legacy continues today. Myths in human life. An interesting story of the Sanhedrin is the controversy of Elazar ben Hyrcanus. One day, members of the Sanhedrin disagreed about the interpretation of a certain law. Elazar ben Hyrcanus promised to perform a miracle to prove that his interpretation was correct. Other members who disagreed with his assertion insisted that he should follow majority rule, even though a voice from heaven favored him. This story is an interesting episode that highlights the importance of democratic debate in the interpretation of Jewish law and the decision-making process, as well as exploring the balance between mystery and reality. How is it? In this issue, I explained the ancient Jewish judicial institution, the Sanhedrin. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like this video. History Spectrum.